What's up? This is Ray. Welcome back. And you know what? This is an important episode because this is probably going to be the most technical, most meaningful, and beneficial episode on this channel. I'm going to use everything I learned about shooting film and I'll kind of help you out. So I want to show you something. This is an image I took. This is an image that's been hanging on this wall for a good while now. Maybe you've seen it. I shot this myself on Kodak T-Max with this rolly cord, and it's a beautiful thing to look at your own image hanging on a wall and know that you created it and how, perfect the exposure is. So that's what I'm going to teach you how to do in this episode. How to develop black and white film. How do you get the negative out of the camera and turn it into this? A lot of people may feel it's too expensive or complicated or time consuming. And what I'm here to show you is a lot of times you can do it even better, in my opinion, than the lab you send it to, and you don't have to wait 5 days for it to come back. You can have your images ready, developed and dried in like 2 hours. So yeah, if you're curious about it, I'm going to show you not just the supplies and equipment, but I'm going to give you some tips and tricks, kind of like how to bend the rules to make it easier, faster, and less complicated, and you're still going to get beautiful results. This is an image I took probably a few months after I learned how to shoot and develop film, and it's one of my favorite images. So as you can see, if I can do it, I think even an 8-year-old could do it if you teach them the right way. So yeah, let's get started. It's a lot to talk about, so let's get right into it. Okay, so I'm going to show you all the parts that we're going to use to make this work. Keep in mind, film is light sensitive, so we want to protect it from light, otherwise it'll get ruined. So what most people will use, this is what's called a dark bag. Look at it. It looks like a t-shirt without the head cut out, right? So what you do is you put your arms in here and you work on the film in this bag, keep light off of it. This is about 15 to 20 bucks. If you don't have a dark bag, you can really go in a dark closet with no windows and seal off the doors and do the exact same thing. So as I show you these parts, I'm going to show you some alternate ways you could do the same thing, easy DIY. Next thing we're going to look at, this is called the developing reel. Right now, it is in 35mm position. A lot of people also use what's called stainless steel reels, but since I don't have that and I never use it, we're going to keep it simple and just use what I know. The way you make this wider, for example, you twist it and pull it open. Now it's in medium format position. So that's really how you adjust this. And this is what you're going to put inside the developing tank to keep light off it while it develops. It works really good. Next important thing is developer. And again, we're going to keep it simple because there's so many different developers out there, we can't name them all. So I'm using Rodinol. This is the oldest developer in history as far as I know. And what's good about it is you could put this bottle down for 40 years and come back, open it up, and it'll still be good. That's one cool thing about it. So we're just going to focus on this today. I have to mention though, some people make their own developer using something called caffeinol. They use coffee, vitamin C, and soda, washing soda. Some people use tea bags with those chemicals. That subject is way beyond the scope of what we're doing here today, but it's just a point to show you there's more than one way to develop film and get great results. Next thing we're going to look at is something called stop bath. After your film is done developing in the tank, you want to pour out that developer and pour in the stop bath. It's going to stop the development process, and that's very important. And again, some people don't use stop bath. Some people just use plain water and pour it in there. I'm going to show you when my stop bath ran out, I'm going to show you what I started using. Some homemade chemicals to make my own stop bath. It's really cool. And the final bottle is the fixer. The fixer is what you finally pour in after the stop bath, and it fixes the image onto the film plane, and it also makes that film no longer light sensitive. Once that's done, you pour out the fixer, rinse the film, and you can hang it to dry. So it's not a complicated process. Next important thing you're going to need is a beaker to measure like this. For example, 35mm film needs about 325 milliliters of developer. So this is how you would measure those amounts. The next important thing is a syringe, because you're going to be taking out specific amounts of the chemicals and mixing them with water to make your chemicals, and this is how you'd get accurate measurements that way. And the final important thing is a thermometer. This is super important because the temperature of the water determines how fast it develops or how slow. So most developing instructions will have a baseline of 20 degrees Celsius, and they'll give you a time to develop that. I'm going to show you also how you can develop film at room temperature and get perfect results also. So as you can see, I'm going to show you how this can be done. There's more than one way to develop, and everyone does it slightly different. But as you can see, the results are what matters, you know, as long as you get good results. So yeah. So now that we know all the parts, let's get into each step-by-step way of how to begin the developing process. Stick around. Okay, you ever heard that saying, work smart, not hard? The first thing I'm going to show you is something slick, a way to make this so much better to begin with. Let's say you're done shooting your roll of film and it's time to rewind it. Don't rewind it all the way. This is what you do. Put your ear to the back of the camera and rewind it. Rewind it until you hear the film disconnect from the spool. Immediately stop and take it out. The reason why, if you reel it all the way in, this is what you're going to get. The film canister is going to look like this. There's going to be no tail hanging out. And in the dark bag, you're going to have to use a bottle opener to bust it open, or some way to get into it to put it on the reel. It takes more time and unnecessary effort. But if you stop when you hear it come off the reel, this is what you're going to get. The film is going to look exactly like this. You're going to have this leader hanging out. All you have to do is just cut the leader and put it onto the reel. Saves so much time. And a side benefit of that is if you ever decide to do bulk loading your own film, you can attach that bulk loader to the tail that's here and wind it into this and reuse this canister many times. So it's just so much smarter, quicker, and I don't see why folks would reel this in all the way. That's one important tip dealing with before you start loading the film. Okay, so this is how we use the dark bag. This is pretty much the items you're going to be putting in there. There's a big zipper under here. I always put my canister on the top left where it'll be out of the way. I put the scissors on the far right because I'm right-handed. The film I put straight down the middle, as well as this. Then we just zip it up and attach the Velcro. Now we put our hands in and we could go to work. Okay, so the next question we're going to have is, how do we put this film onto the reel? And keep in mind, this section is what we're going to be doing in the dark bag. So yes, first thing we're going to do is when you look at your film, there's going to be a little leader hanging off. You want to cut off that leader, and then we're going to take the reel. This is a special reel I want to talk to you about later. It makes it so much easier. It's made by Arista, but we'll talk about that later. So in the dark bag now, you're going to take the front of this and push it into this opening right here. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a ball bearing right here. That's very important. What we're going to do is push or even pull the film past the ball bearing. See that? And then I'm going to pull this. Give me some room. And then we're going to ratchet this. Notice how as I turn it back and forth, it's ratcheting forward. What's cool about the ball bearings is they let the film go in one direction, but not the other direction. Yeah. Just unwind it. So look here, we reached the end of the roll. What I will do at this point in the dark bag is I'll cut off about here and then reel the rest of the film on. All right, I'm going to show you something most people really don't talk about when dealing with film. Let's say you accidentally reel the film in, rewind it all the way in the canister, and you have no way to pry it open in the dark bag. I'm going to show you how to open this with your bare hands like the Incredible Hulk. Check this out. All you do is start prying open one corner of the front. See how it already bent? See how easy it is to bend? So now inside the dark bag, here's what you're going to do. Open it like a clam. And then when you have it open, you pry these sides down like that. There's a film. quick, easy. It's almost not necessary to need the the can opener, right? So that's one way to do it. When you do it this way, of course, you won't be able to reuse this canister, but that's just something to do in an emergency if you're in the bag and you cannot get it open. Very cool trick. Okay, so keep in mind, we're still in the dark bag doing this blind. We're going to take our film that's on the reel. We're going to put it on the spindle, push it all the way down. This is a mistake I used to make when I first started developing film. I would put the cap on, pour in the developer, and do my inversions. But one thing I found was sometimes when I developed the film, I'm going to show you an image right now. The bottom half of the film wasn't fully developed and I didn't know why, what was going on. Let me show you what was happening. What I didn't realize was that as I was inverting the film, this spool was slowly sliding up the spindle like that. So when I put it in the tank, part of the film was above the developer line. It was not developing at the same rate. And that was a big problem. It took me forever to figure out what caused that. But when I figured that out, what you need to do is you put a blank spool now on top of that one that you're developing underneath. And that'll keep it from sliding up on the spool. Very important. Ruined some good photos until I figured that out the hard way. All right, I'm going to show you a nuance, a piece of equipment that no one talks about. It's like a hidden secret. This is set in medium format position, right? And this is the medium format. So imagine you're in a dark bag. You can't see what you're doing. And you have to fit this medium format film in between these two little tabs. It's already hard to feel them when I'm seeing. So look, we got it in. I'm going to pull it past the ball bearing. What I don't like about this is as you're pushing it in, it's easy to collapse it, to press in, and you can make so much mistakes when you're learning that your hand can start sweating and then it could just ruin everything. But we got this one on. So I'm going to show you a better way, a better tool to do this. This is the Arista Premium Roll. I didn't figure out this until a year or so after I started developing film. See these two ledges right here? That makes all the difference. It makes it so much easier because when you're in the dark bag, you can't see what you're doing, but you know you can just push this here and press down on the ledge. And when it stops going, you know it's hitting up against the ball bearing. So you just pull it through the rest of the way. Don't force it. There. So these ledges underneath here make all the difference to making it easy doing it blind in the dark bag. And once I figured that out, I wouldn't use this old model again. They look very similar, but the experience is very different. So premium Arista reel, very important. I'll put a link to these below. Once you have everything done that we showed you earlier, you unzip. Okay, so now the important part. How do we dilute and measure our chemicals? When using Rodinol, I like to dilute it 1 part developer, 50 parts water. Some people use 1/125th, but we're going to keep it simple. So 325 milliliters is what it takes to develop 1 roll of 35 millimeter film. And 1/50th of that is 6.8 milliliters of developer. So what I do is I just use this syringe and I withdraw 6.8 milliliters of water, and then I'll pull out 6.8 milliliters of developer and squirt that in there. And that's what you would do for the stop bath and the fixer also. So pretty much basic. So that's how we do the chemicals. Okay, so one of the most important and critical parts of developing black and white film is maintaining accurate temperature. Most times the developing instructions will tell you to use 20 degrees Celsius. But that's kind of tricky because what you have to do is put your developing beaker in an ice bath and put the thermometer in there and cool it down. Stir it until it reaches 20 degrees. The problem is it takes time, and sometimes you may cool it down too much, and then you'll have to warm it back up, and it's just kind of tricky and finicky. I did that for a couple years though, but what I found is this app on my phone called Devit. It allows you to put in the prescribed temperature of 20 degrees Celsius, but it also allows you to put in the actual temperature of the room temperature water, which mine is normally 26 degrees. So Tri-X at 20 degrees Celsius is normally 13 minutes. once I put in the adjusted water temperature of 26 degrees, it normally drops to either 8 minutes or 8 minutes and 30 seconds. I can't remember, but the advantage of that is you maintain the exact same temperature throughout the entire development. And I really can't see any difference in the quality of the images. And it's just so much easier and faster doing that. So it's up to you however you want to do it, but that's one thing I want you to check out is this app called Devit, and it's free, so it just makes your life so much easier maintaining temperature. Color film, on the other hand, you have to maintain it at 102 degrees, and that's, for me, that's even more tricky and technical though, so that's just something I had to point out. Okay, so finally, here's the mechanics of how to develop the film. So let's say you have the film in here and everything, you're ready to go. Make sure you have your app ready, or your phone timer, or anything that you're going to use to time it. So let's say it's Tri-X, it says 13 minutes. First thing you're going to do is open this top, pour in water and let it soak for about 2 minutes. That's preparing the film. After it's done soaking for 2 minutes, you pour out that water and then you pour in your developer. As soon as you pour in the developer, you put the cap on and start the timer, and then you start doing the inversions. Most instructions will say do inversions for the first 30 seconds. And look at how I'm doing the inversions. I'm not just turning it upside down, but I'm twisting the canister as I turn it. That way the developer is running over the film in a kind of random kind of way, and it's not running in one direction each time. So once you finally do those 30-second inversions, you tap it 2 times and leave it. The reason you tap it is sometimes there's going to be bubbles, air bubbles stuck to the surface of the film, and that's theoretically going to dislodge them. So what will happen is most film directions will say they want you to invert once every 30 seconds, and most likely that will mean three inversions, and then you put it back down. So let's say after 13 minutes of those inversions, when you're done, open the top and pour out the developer. What I like to do before I put in the stop bath, I like to rinse the developer out one time and pour it out. That way the excess developer in here isn't kind of contaminating the stop bath. Most instructions don't say to do that. That's just something I do out of a habit. So now when we pour the stop bath in, it takes about 60 seconds and it stops the development of the film so it doesn't start looking overexposed on the surface of the film. Once you're done with that, you can reuse the stop bath. So you pour that in your canister. And I like to rinse the stop bath one time before I put in the fixer, just in case the stop bath may start to dilute or weaken the fixer. That's just something I do out of habit. So we finally put the fixer in, put the cap on, and it's the same inversion scenario. The first 30 seconds, and then you tap it. The fixer normally, you don't need usually more than 3 minutes, but there's nothing wrong with fixing longer than that. One important thing to know, how do you know when your fixer is exhausted or when you got to stop using it? When you take the film out after you're fixing and you look at the film, if it looks cloudy, if you can't see through it, that means the fixer is exhausted, it's too weak to fix the film. It's not a problem, because all you have to do is pour out that exhausted fixer and make a new batch real quick. Once you put it in, it'll fix perfectly back to normal. The next important thing to know is when you're done fixing, you have to rinse it out. It's very important. When I first started developing film, I was in a rush to rinse it out. You're supposed to rinse it at least 3 minutes. I would rinse it for 1 minute. And then I would take the film out and wonder why it looks so blue. And I didn't realize it's because I didn't rinse it out. The film base absorbs the chemicals. So the more you rinse it, the clearer that base gets. And then you'll get a good result there. What a lot of people will do, they'll put something in there called, I think it's called photo flow. It's a chemical that you dip in some water and it just makes the water soft, and that way when you hang it up to dry, the film doesn't develop spots. I've never really used photo flow. I've never really had problems with spots, but that is important for me to point that out. So once you have it hanging up to dry, that's really the end of the developing process, and it's something you never get tired of, taking that film out the canister and seeing it for the first time. Never get tired of it. It's a beautiful thing. And when you look at the film, you immediately realize, wow, some of these may be a little overexposed or some of these were underexposed. and that's how you learn for next time how to adjust your settings when you're shooting. But that's the basic mechanics of developing film. Okay, so that is pretty much the basics of how to develop film at home. I hope you can see that it's not super difficult, especially as long as you just follow the basics of it. I'm going to put some links below where you can get all of these different products for a reasonable price. Yeah, if you decide to try this, or if you have any questions before you try it, definitely leave them below. I'll help you the best I can. And let me know what you think of this video. I tried to make this as detailed and entertaining as possible, even though it's not easy to do with something you may consider boring like this. But yeah, hopefully you got through to the end and benefited from it. So yeah, thanks for watching, and keep in mind, no matter how you develop your film or whatever you do for your creative photography or alternative processes, until next time, as always, keep it real.